Yo, so there's this channel that was recommended to me like maybe like a week or two ago, and it's called Coffee House Crimes, and or hold up, coffee, yeah, Coffee House Crime, and I guess this dude is like new-ish, like posting for like a year or two, but his videos are pretty fucking like good and interesting, and I'm assuming he does like all of his research because I haven't found any of these to be wrong yet. But then again, I've only watched like three or four videos, but they're pretty good. And I figured honestly we could just watch them together because even if one person watches this, that's one extra person that like if this was a missing person, because he does solved and unsolved cases. So if it was a missing person, and one other person sees this, then they could, if they're on the street and they see someone that looks like someone from this video, they could be like, "Yo, we just helped find someone." But yeah, this is someone named Robert Leeming. I'm not sure who he is, but this is like the newest video he just dropped a few days ago. He drops one every week, so I can do this once a week.
You were kind of the primary suspect in this homicide
I still am.
investigation. You still are. What are your
And some of these
thoughts on
cases
that?
are
What
wild,
your
wild.
emotions right now? What's kind of going through your head?
This is Robert Leeming, and at the time of this recording, his ex-girlfriend and her 22-month-old daughter had been missing for 11 days. And in the weeks to follow, Robert's story would become turbulent and grisly. But is Robert Leeming an innocent man? Or was he hiding a terrible and dark secret to the rest of the world? My name is Adrian, and welcome back to another video by Coffee House Crime. Today we're looking at the case of Robert Leeming and
Wait,
the solved
so-
disappearance of Jasmine Lovett and her daughter,
Okay, solved.
Leah Sanderson. But before we get into today's video, I just wanted to let you know that I post solved, unsolved, and strange cases here on a weekly basis. So if that sounds like
Oh,
a
well,
fun
there you go.
thing,
He's explaining it for
please
you right
consider
there.
subscribing to Coffee House Crime. So pull up a seat, grab a coffee, and sit back. This is the case of Robert Leeming.
Wait, so he said, is he innocent or was he guilty? I wonder if he actually got convicted yet, or if it's like an ongoing case. Who even is Robert? Well,
The
he'll
coniferous
probably
spruce,
tell us.
maple syrup, and snow. Of course, I'm talking about Canada. And our case today takes us to the western half, to the city of Calgary.
Tell me about it.
Nestled to the east of Canada's mountainous Banff National Park, Calgary is somewhat isolated from its neighbours. But that is not necessarily a bad thing. Millions of people
That looks
travel
so
here
nice.
for its beautiful landscapes,
But it sucks to live in
resort
there. Ooh, that
towns,
looks
and a very
gorgeous.
comfortable way of living. And deep in the southern suburbs of Calgary lived Jasmine Lovett and her daughter, Ilya,
Wait a
isolated
second.
from its
I'm sorry.
neighbours.
Look at these
But
landscapes,
that is not
though.
necessarily a
Hold up.
bad thing. Millions of people travel here for its beautiful landscape.
Look at that. Imagine swimming in that, or like, just get like a little canoe and just go like paddling around. That looks beautiful.
Resort towns,
Oh,
and a
man.
very comfortable way
Look at that building. That looks sick. Yo,
of living.
I'm gonna visit Canada.
And deep in the southern suburbs of Calgary
One
lived
day.
Jasmine Lovett and her daughter, Ilya Sanderson. Jasmine was renting, paying monthly to live with their landlord, Robert Leeming. And although this rental agreement was strictly business, the relationship between Jasmine and Robert was not.
I was about to
Following the
say,
birth of Ilya, Jasmine had recently split up
living
Ilya's
with your
father.
landlord?
And, as you can imagine, being a young single mother put Jasmine in a vulnerable position. At the
Wait a
age of
second, hold up.
24,
I'm sorry. Did she have a kid with him, or that was her other kid,
Jasmine and Robert was
or
not.
that's a kid that she had already?
Following the birth of Ilya, Jasmine had recently split up with Ilya's father.
Okay.
And, as you can imagine, being a young single mother put Jasmine in a vulnerable position. At the age of 24, she was left to face the struggles of everyday life by herself. To Jasmine, her baby daughter Ilya was her world. But there was much more to Jasmine outside of being a mother. She still had needs, desires, and the want to be loved. And so, after breaking up with Ilya's father, she took to dating apps to find a new partner. It's on one of these apps that she encountered a new
shit.
face, and his name was Robert Leeming. The two of them started
Bro,
talking,
these
and
fucking
over
dating
time, they
websites,
grew
man.
closer, this eventually leading into a casual relationship.
Do
Only
dating
1 month
websites
into
even? Has anyone heard a successful relationship story from a dating website? Like one that's not full of, like, hatred and regret.
dating Jasmine had found herself in a difficult housing situation,
I feel like you gotta
which
meet
in
someone
return
natural these
prompted
days, you know?
Robert to offer
That's
her
probably
to
the
come
best
stay
way to
with
meet
him,
people.
on the condition if she could afford a small amount of rent. Moving forward, their home life was simple,
That
and
looks
Robert was
nice.
happy to
Look at
help
that
look
sunset.
after Aaliyah whenever Jasmine needed
Every
to
day.
work or run errands.
Every day
And
we
in
get to see
return,
that.
Jasmine would offer comfort and support when it came to Robert's own son, who lived with his ex-girlfriend. Jasmine was grateful to have Robert. Supposedly, he was a very supportive partner. And this happy way of living would continue, but only for a short while. Because Robert Leeming actually had a dark history.
Oh shit.
Being the child to a British military officer, Robert was born in a home away from home, on a British army base located in Germany. But soon after this, his parents moved back to England, where Robert spent most of his childhood in the small town of Marlborough, located in Wiltshire, England. His life was standard and
Marlborough.
rural, growing up in the countryside next to his brothers Christopher and George Leeming. However, at the age of 7, strange fascinations began to emerge. Barely old enough to even know what one was, Robert started to collect knives. Maybe something to expect from an edgy teenager, but not a 7-year-old child.
7?
And surprisingly, his parents allowed Robert to keep these knives too. Gearing up towards adulthood, Robert
7 years
decided
old,
not to
fucking
go to
around with knives, bro.
university, but instead, he trained up to become a heavy machinery mechanic. It was in the late 2000s, while on the internet, that Robert started speaking to a young teacher in Canada, and her name was Sarah. The two would speak almost every night, adjusting their sleep schedules so they could tackle the time zone difference. And before they knew it, they fell in love. However, there was one thing that was preventing their relationship from progressing any further, and that was the Atlantic Ocean.
Oh, just a small swim. I'll be over in a couple
They say
hours.
that distance makes the heart grow fond. And granted, it certainly can. But indefinitely living far away from your partner isn't easy. At the time, Sarah was training to become a teacher.
I don't
and
think
she didn't
distant
exactly
relationships
want
will
to
ever
give
work.
up her professional studies for a man that she'd never properly lived with before. So Robert decided to
that too,
apply
yeah.
for Canadian residency instead. And fortunately, with Canada being the size that it is, the country heavily relies on its trucks to support its economic demands. And
He's a
therefore,
heavy
heavy
mechanic,
machinery
or
mechanics
heavy
were in
machinery.
very high demand. So
Makes
after
sense.
being granted permanent residency, Robert uprooted himself from his quaint rural town of Marlborough
Oh, look
and
at the
moved over
babies.
to the mountainous countryside of Canada.
Yo, that looks fucking
Sarah lived
gorgeous.
in Calgary, to be precise, and shortly after arriving, the two got married in the month of February 2013, before buying their first place together in the suburb of Cranston. They bought slightly above their comfortability, purchasing a brand new townhouse in the new estate of Cranston's Cranfield, which was a
They're trying to
perfect
live
place
bougie.
to begin a family. Which is exactly what happened, as soon after they had a son, with their pet dog Axel making a 4th addition to the family.
Is that
The
Axel?
relationship,
No, I'm kidding.
once torn apart by an ocean, would finally flourish over the years into a family. Perfect love story, right? You would be forgiven for thinking so, but unfortunately, they would divorce in the year 2017, and the reasons for this divorce
Wait.
were very understandable.
Wait, how long were they married? Wait, when did they
The dark
get married?
life of Robert Leeming runs deep.
Um,
In official divorce papers
I'm
signed
not
by
that worried
Sarah,
about it. Probably like
Robert
a couple
had been
years.
emotionally abusing her throughout the years. Within these documents, Sarah claimed, "He told me I was crazy, told me I was nuts, called me useless and worthless, and told me I needed psychiatric help." Sarah also claimed that Robert told her that she had ruined his life by having a baby he didn't want, a dog he didn't care for, and giving him a life that he didn't desire to continue. He saw every shortcoming and drawback
He's the one
in his
that did
life
all of
to
it?
be Sarah's fault.
What an
Problems
asshole.
started appearing outside of his marriage too. Robert often jumped between jobs, under the reason that he was often accused of stealing from his employer. And he often partook in drug use
Dumbass.
too. Towards the end of his marriage with Sarah, he was drinking and smoking marijuana on a daily basis. Which sure may be no problem, but everything in moderation, right? He
Well,
was
he was
also
overdoing
charged
it.
with 3 counts of animal cruelty.
Ooh.
His most shameful moment was when he took the family dog Axel out to the mountains, where he then left him tied to a tree with no food or water to die.
Come on, bro. How can you...
All of this behavior accumulated over the years.
What a fucking
eventually
weirdo.
leading Sarah to feel like she and her
As he
son
was, like,
were in
beating her up,
danger.
too?
Robert was still collecting knives too, and at this point he had over 60 of them. He was also collecting pistols, of which he stored in a vault. The divorce went ahead and the two formally split, which actually resulted in a strict no-contact policy. And as for the 4-year-old son, well, no surprise, he went to Sarah. And due to previous negligence, Robert could only see his son under very strict supervision.
Well,
But
you're
with
telling me
Sarah
the
now
guy
safe
with
and
60
out of the
knives
picture,
and a bunch of
Robert was
guns
growing
and
lonely. That's when he
animal
decided to
cruelty
take to
under his
dating
belt?
apps,
He
which,
can't
of
get his
course, is
child?
where he met Jasmine. As time progressed, and after Jasmine moved in, Robert would once again start to feel tied down by Jasmine.
Wait
and
a
her
second.
daughter,
Wait a second. Wait a second. So this was all with a
under
different
very
woman?
strict supervision. But with Sarah now safe and out of the picture, Robert was growing lonely. That's when he decided to take to dating apps, which of course is where
I
he
thought
met
the whole
Jasmine.
time he was talking about this lady. So that was
As
a whole
time
separate
progressed,
incident.
And after Jasmine moved in,
Imagine if this
Robert
girl
would
knew
once
that.
again start to feel tied down by Jasmine and her daughter. This feeling made Robert very unhappy.
They ain't
And
even with
through
you, bro. They just
desperation,
living with
He
you.
re-downloaded several old dating apps.
Oh, yeah.
But Jasmine was smart. She knew something was up, and she noticed that Robert started to act different when around her. She even expressed her concern to her sister Genevieve, who had always thought that Jasmine's and Robert's relationship was a little unusual. Eventually, Jasmine confronted Robert to accuse him of cheating on her. He denied it, but deep down, she knew what was going on.
What the heck are these
Unfortunately,
buildings doing?
These circumstances would lay the foundation
sorry.
to
Oops.
Robert to accuse him of cheating on her.
What are they
He denied
doing?
it, but deep down, she knew what was going on.
Just random lights.
Unfortunately, these circumstances would lay the foundation to a very rocky relationship. But despite this, they would outwardly portray themselves as still together, even while at gatherings with Jasmine's family.
I want to find a spot like that
This
to chill
included
at.
a family gathering on the 14th of
Have a
April
sesh.
2019,
That'd be cool.
when Robert and Jasmine attended a dinner with Jasmine's mother Kim and sister Genevieve. The meal went as planned. There was nothing out of the ordinary between the two, and the day was mostly spent playing with Aaliyah and enjoying the early spring weather. However, little did Jasmine's family know that this would be the last time they would ever see Jasmine or Aaliyah again.
Damn, that's weird. Imagine spending the whole day playing with them and having family time, and then all of a sudden they're just gone. That's gotta be a weird feeling.
On the 19th of April 2019, Jasmine's family had arranged to have dinner together. Jasmine accepted the offer. With Kim making all preparations, all Jasmine and Genevieve had to do was
I hope
turn
the
up.
volume has been loud enough.
But Jasmine failed to make it. And when they tried to call her, her phone would ring, but eventually go through to voicemail. When it came to Jasmine, this was very unusual. She was very attentive and informative towards her family, regularly keeping in touch through her phone and in person. In fact, she had always kept in very regular contact with her mother and her sister. Even just a couple days of silence was strange. Nevertheless, her family thought that maybe she had just let time get away with her, so no further correspondence was made.
Am I tripping? I feel like it looks red right here. Oh, it's probably the camera. Like, this looks red-ish. Am I tripping? Like red?
But as 2 more days passed and still no word from Jasmine, Kim started to get worried. She then decided to travel to Robert's townhouse to check in on the family. Nothing seemed amiss upon walking to the front door. Aaliyah's toys were scattered in the front, and
Oh,
there were
man.
2 pairs of sneakers on the front porch. But she did notice that the sneakers were wet, as if they had just been hosed down. But after knocking on the front door, no one answered. She tried again, but still, nothing. Kim walked away, unsure.
That's gotta be so weird, dude. Imagine walking... Because, like, imagine later on she's probably thinking, like, damn, whenever I was knocking on the door, they were probably inside, like, whatever the situation is, you know, whatever they find out later, like, if she was dead or, you know. Like, she's gonna be like, yo, I fucking knocked on the door and they're on the other side. All I had to do was open the door. Or that's just gotta be weird, honestly, like, for anyone that does walk in on something crazy. Like, people that walk in on bodies on the ground and shit and they gotta call the cops. That's gotta be so, like, strange. Just, like, imagine walking in on someone dead and you're like, what the fuck, dude? And then you gotta call the cops and be like, yo, there's someone dead here. fucking
Or
weird.
of what to do.
Especially if it's someone you know.
But as
That's-
2 days of silence turned into 5,
That's
her
fucked.
worries had finally come to a breaking point. Kim travelled down to a local police station to report her daughter, Jasmine Lovett, and her granddaughter, Aaliyah Sanderson, as missing. Police were quick to launch an investigation into their disappearance, and the search would begin at their last known place of residence, which of course was Robert's townhouse. Police officers arrived at Robert's residence the very next day, but just the same as Kim's visit, they would knock on the door only to be met with silence. With no answer, they assumed that maybe he just wasn't home, so after leaving a notice on his front door, they returned to their car, waiting until he got back. He never showed up, but
her car
as it got dark outside,
be
officers
outside?
in their car would notice that the lights inside the house were turning on and off. So with newfound curiosity, police again approached the house, but this time knocked harder and shouted for his name, knowing that he was inside.
Yo.
And eventually, Robert caved. He opened the door and let officers inside. And quite clearly, Robert was very drunk and high.
How's it going?
Says she's with her sister.
Well, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Look at him, dude. That's so weird.
So, sorry, you're Robert? Okay.
You're acting too
Hey,
chill,
we've
bro.
been
There's a
here
bunch of
for
cops around.
hours and hours and hours now, hey? Banging on your door.
Hey. They're definitely in Canada. We waited for you.
Been drinking and smoking a lot, so
Okay.
okay, so she's not with her sister.
Your face looks red from over here, bro. You lying.
What do you mean?
You're too bad at acting.
Well, that's the reason that we're here,
What do you mean?
is that the family's calling us, saying we haven't heard from our daughter and our sister.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Okay, that makes sense?
Yeah,
Okay, why does that make sense?
because I haven't heard from her either.
Okay.
So why would that make sense, though?
So do you guys get in some sort of argument?
Not aware of.
Well, not that you're aware of. Like, you're not making a whole lot of sense to
No,
me
like,
here, guy.
like, I don't know what.
He's definitely guilty,
Well,
even if he's drunk.
sorry, I'm still getting my bearings here. So she's not with her family, but she did threaten to move out. I don't know, like 3 weeks ago. We got into a tizzy. She threw a bunch of my stuff out, food, stuff like that. Nothing like that would concern me.
Nothing that would concern you. Okay.
I've had people living with me before, and they move out. You don't hear
Right,
from
but this isn't just like a roommate. This is your girlfriend.
For real, bro.
small roommate, big girlfriend.
Okay. So, the last time that you saw Jasmine was when?
Thursday.
And at that time, you guys were A-okay or fighting, or what was the status?
A-okay?
I would say in the air, judging by what obviously has gone down. Just, drink.
Does this dude have like an English accent as well or something?
Probably been on my own.
Doesn't sound like.
Okay.
Does she have a car? I don't know.
No, she doesn't have a license as far as I'm aware.
That's wrong. You see the note on the door?
Like he said, as far as I'm aware.
I do know.
I don't think Canadians say. I'm sure Canadians say aware.
I'm gonna go make the call to mom and try and get some more info.
Yo, they should.
Obvious to say, but officers were not satisfied with Robert's story, or even his
They should
behavior.
release more body cam footage type shit, cause that was weird. But at the same time, then more people that like you can get. Well, I mean, especially nowadays, like YouTube. I feel like, or I've seen YouTube videos that are titled like, psychiatrist breaks down movements and facial gestures of so and so during their interview, and like random fucking like, okay. I mean, anyone can tell that they're acting guilty. It doesn't take. But at the same time, yeah, you get more eyes on the actual not victim, suspect, and more people can kind of be like, well, yeah, no, look at how he did this, look at how he did that. They could break it down more, basically. More help for
To be
the
honest. But before officers
case.
could do anything about it, they would have to go and obtain a search warrant for his house. And only one day after speaking to Robert, police would finally obtain that warrant. In the early afternoon hours of the 25th of April, a SWAT team arrived at Robert Leeming's house to arrest him. And shortly after arrival, things would turn strange very quickly. To begin with, entering through the front door proved to be almost impossible, and after attempting to open it with force, the door held firm. Once they had gained access through the back door, police internally made their way to open the front door, only to be greeted with this sight.
What the heck?
Before being arrested, Robert had barricaded his front door shut with barge poles, and proceeding with their search, investigators found several strips of bacon placed around the house, one dangling from the back of a dining chair, and another strip located in the cap of a dry sump system in the furnace room. They would also find a locked padlock on the door to the dry sump system, one dangling from the back of a dining chair, and another strip located in the cap of a dry sump system in the furnace room. They would also find a locked padlock on the door to the master bedroom, where Robert kept his guns and his extensive knife collection. But none of these strange clues proved any sort of foul play.
Maybe there was like
While under
blood on
arrest,
those spots.
Robert claimed that he last saw Jasmine and Aaliyah on the 18th of April, when the three of them had gone for a picnic near Bragg Creek. He claimed,
We went for beers and chilled out and came back, and they were here for the next day. I went somewhere else, and they weren't here when I came back.
Look at
Robert
these. I
also
wonder if you could
denied
just go
being in a
walk over
relationship
there.
with Jasmine.
I'm sorry, but these shots are fucking cool. Like, whoever took this video, I wonder if like you drove to this spot, if you could literally just like walk up to here, or if it's like a park and you have to like pay to get in, or like I don't even know. Cause I'm trying to find some spots like this, yo.
Weren't here when I came back.
That looks
Robert
nice.
also denied being in a relationship with Jasmine, and told authorities that there was no way he could do anything to a young mother or her daughter, and apparently he was out at the time Jasmine had left the property. Although peculiar, this investigation found no substantial evidence that linked Robert Leeming to the disappearance of Jasmine or Aaliyah, and with no evidence, they were forced to release Robert only 24 hours later. He was therefore released and dropped off at a local shopping mall, where he was then told to sit tight while forensic analysis wrapped up. And, being British, he went straight to the pub for drinks.
I called it.
After a few
I got an
pints,
English
the media
accent.
showed up, where they then asked if they could interview him, and being drunk, he agreed. And, you know, that probably wasn't a good
I don't know why I forgot he was across the fucking ocean. They
idea
made
to
a
begin
whole
with,
point about that.
especially with the way that he answered some of those questions.
Okay, ready to go?
Okay.
Look at how
I mean,
awkward this
it's
man
been a
is.
whirlwind couple of days, big investigation. What can you tell us about your experience with this in the last 2 days?
Yeah, I can. I was arrested by the tactical team. It's pretty extreme from my experience.
Yo, you're weird, bro.
Of course, I'd never experienced this before, and they're still investigating.
So, how long were you in police custody?
You're like tensing up and shit. It looks like.
24 hours, I think.
So, what have you been doing in the meantime?
Just been here. Literally.
So, was she living there at the time?
Correct.
Okay, so you own the house.
Correct.
She
Is a tenant.
is a tenant along
Right.
with Aaliyah.
With her daughter, yes, correct.
Okay, so that was the extent of your relationship. She rented from you.
Dude, this dude is so
And you shared
weird,
them.
bro.
Correct.
Was there any romantic involvement between the two of you, or is there?
There was initially, but towards the end, no.
How would you characterize your relationship with Jasmine?
Good.
I mean, were you a boyfriend, girlfriend, or?
No, just good friends. Nothing alarmed me until, of course, I got arrested. So
What happens with you
This dude is so
right
weird.
now?
I'm just gonna wait until I get a phone call to say that I can
Why
go.
are you so smiles, bro? Why are you laughing and shit? It ain't a
How are
joke.
you feeling throughout all of this?
This dude laughing and shit, trying to play it off like he innocent, but like, one, you're so tense, bro. You're literally tense as fuck. Two, you're like, you keep trying to laugh everything off when it ain't a joke. It's a missing woman and a missing little girl, you know, like, and you literally, you're the number one suspect living with them, and you think it's funny.
How are you feeling throughout all of this?
Traumatized, of course.
Is there anything else that you want to add to all this?
Yeah, if anyone sees her or Aaliyah, Jasmine or Aaliyah, please, let the authorities know. They said that they would be done with the property today.
Look
I
at how
ended
weird
up
he
being
is.
able to go back to the property, but
So you're.
It's like he's drunk right now.
seems almost that. Yes.
During this interview, there were many troubling signs to indicate that Robert knew more than he was actually leading on, and his choice in
weird,
words
bro.
often depicted a much more worrying conclusion to the case. For example, it was noted that the way he described Jasmine was in the past tense.
I don't
Who do
know
you think
words.
they are?
I have no idea. I have no idea.
Did she hang out with questionable people? Was she a good person?
No, she was a good person. Nice person. Yeah, I can't. There
Was a good
nothing
person?
Negative that I would say about
Oh
her.
yeah, I guess you would say no. She's a good
She
person.
was a lovely person.
Well, I
I had
mean,
no issues with her.
I don't
Robert's
know.
body language often mismatched his words too, and he always seemed to look away when answering serious questions.
And
Robert,
laughs and shit.
You've been very open with the media here today. Why is it that you're choosing to speak to the media?
Because I have nothing to hide.
You were kind of the primary suspect in this homicide
I still am.
investigation. You still are. What are your thoughts about that, and what are your emotions right now? What's kind of going through your head?
It's very stressful, but I hope they will be found, and
You're
I hope
weird.
we can move forward from this. We were friends, absolutely friends, and supported each other.
He would also say correct way too many times. Kind of
Yeah, I
annoying.
know. That shit was annoying, bro.
Correct.
Like a fucking.
Correct.
It sounds like he's saying cracked.
Correct.
Yo, I'm fucking cracked. It sounds like he's saying cracked. No, I thought the same thing, bro. He kept saying correct, and he sounded like a robot at one point. He was like, because it sounded the exact same for like 5 times in a row. Correct. I was like, bro, shut your incorrect ass up, boy.
Following an inconclusive investigation, Robert was eventually allowed back in his home later that evening. Forensic analysis had found nothing.
And
But
yo, that's
Cal-
weird too. Like, seeing him talking all this, saying like, I hope they get found. I hope they find them, and I hope they're okay. Blah blah blah. And then like you come to find out that that this is the person that killed them, and they're over here like, because there was another story of a woman and her boyfriend that killed the woman's daughter for no fucking reason. Like, they were just complete assholes, bro. They would beat her up and shit for no reason. Like, it was just a little girl. She wasn't even a bad girl, but I think it's called like TikTok mom like lies or uses her kid's death as clout whenever she was the reason that her kid died. Like, her and her boyfriend beat her to death, like literally. And the whole time, yeah, she was making TikToks after, like, dancing, like doing dances saying, I miss you, baby girl. I know you're looking down on me and shit like that. And it's like, you're like, bro, I can't believe she did all this shit and tried to chase clout knowing that the girl was dead and that you were the one that did it. Like, some people are just fucking wild, man. I don't understand.
Calgary police were still determined to find answers. However, even after sweeping through the surrounding wilderness, nothing pivotal was found. Digging through local surveillance footage would confirm one final sighting of Jasmine and Aaliyah, which was on the 15th of April at a shop just a few miles from where they lived. But otherwise, that was it. Robert maintained his innocence wherever he could, claiming that he was with another woman at the time of their disappearance. But throughout the remainder of April,
just filming
Robert's
him.
health and his behaviour continued to decline. In the eyes of Calgary's police department, Robert was still their prime suspect.
How can
But
they
they
not?
still
Why do they not have him? Don't they have enough to keep him under arrest? Or do they not, because all they know is that she's missing? They haven't found any evidence leading towards him, right? That's so weird. Because then, like, look at him. Like, he's being filmed all the time. And he's just like... But everybody basically knows, like, well, I mean, obviously. Or I guess that's how they're going to...
continued
Well,
to
actually,
decline.
It just seems like...
In the
they
eyes of
haven't actually-
Calgary's police department, Robert was still their
I would
prime
say he
suspect.
did do it. Yeah, I would say he
But
did
they
do
still
it.
needed to unearth a connection between him and
But I guess that's
Jasmine's
not
absence.
enough to hold him in a cell.
Psychologists analysed his public interviews, and through his body language, they believed he had acted in a dishonest manner. So, following a rather dry investigation, the Calgary Police Department decided to bring this case up a notch. Child Protective Services began to plan an undercover operation against Robert, a project that they named Operation Highwood.
Highwood?
The goal was simple. Undercover cops would pose as cop-hating informants to Robert, win his trust, and then learn if he had anything to do with Jasmine and Aaliyah's disappearance.
You totally hate cops,
But
don't you?
what they ended up uncovering
So what actually
would be
happened?
far more sinister and absolute. In May of 2019, 2 undercover officers approached Robert as he walked out of a liquor store near his home. They approached him under the fake disguise of being locals who lived in the neighborhood and had seen his media interview. They expressed their concerns towards Robert, informing him that they knew someone who had discovered a bag of evidence that incriminated Robert with Jasmine's disappearance.
Ah, shit.
And surprisingly, Robert took the bait.
Stupid
Leading the
ass.
undercover officers to his workplace, he knew it was a location where he wasn't being monitored. And while there, he talked to his supposed
Wait a
new
second. How the heck? So would they just walk up and they're just like, hey, so I found a bag that kind of points you to the murders if you're trying to come help me dispose of it. And this dude's like, okay.
informing him that they knew someone who had
Wait,
discovered a
and,
bag of
and shouldn't that be enough? Shouldn't that be enough if he's going somewhere to clear evidence? Doesn't that prove guilt right there? Like as soon as he said, okay, let me go, like, you know, as soon as he takes the bait, wouldn't that be enough for him to get at least under arrest, placed under arrest?
interview. They expressed their concerns towards Robert, informing him that they knew someone who had discovered a bag of evidence that incriminated Robert with Jasmine's disappearance. And surprisingly, Robert took the bait. Leading the undercover officers to his workplace, he knew it was a location where he wasn't being monitored. And while there, he talked to his supposed new friends for several hours. The topic and all details were all about what really happened to Jasmine and Aaliyah.
Oh, he
And
spilled the beans?
tragically, they were both dead. He had killed Jasmine and buried both of their bodies.
What a fucking weirdo, bro. You meet 2 people, they tell you that they know someone that found evidence against you, so you go with them to your workplace, drink with them, and then tell them how you did murder them. Just because you thought they were your homies. And then imagine being those cops. Like, you literally got to pretend, and you got to hear this sick fuck talk about what he did to the people that you've been helping, trying to find. Like, imagine not losing your temper in that room. Not just fucking beating the fuck out of this man.
After 4.5 hours, Robert agreed to take his new best buddies to their location, driving 90 miles west of Calgary to Grizzly Creek in Kananaskis County. Exiting his car, Robert led the 2 men between several trees, where he then quickly came to a stop.
Okay, so where to?
Asked one of the men, to which Robert replied with,
You're looking at it.
and beside their feet, underneath the crisp mulch and dead branches, lay a blue blanket. They were looking at the shallow grave of Jasmine and Aaliyah. Jasmine appeared to have been struck in the head, with a bullet wound behind her left ear. And as for little Aaliyah, she had trauma injuries to her head. An overwhelming stench of gasoline hung in the air. With their bodies finally located, officers would reveal Robert's one big mistake. And with that said, they would formally arrest him for the murder of Jasmine Lovett and Aaliyah Sanderson. And with Robert's secret now...
Not gonna lie, if they were out in the middle of the fields, you know, no cameras or nothing, I would say that he tripped and fell and hurt himself really, really, really bad before they could put him in handcuffs. You know, there's a lot of sticks to trip over.
Details of what actually happened to Aaliyah and Jasmine would eventually come to light. On the 16th of April 2019, Jasmine and Aaliyah were spotted at their local supermarket before
Look,
heading
she even
back
smiles
to
right
Robert's
here, look.
home. And later that evening, Robert was looking
She seemed like a
after
sweet
Aaliyah
girl.
while Jasmine was out of the house.
Even though that's like the only clip I've
Robert
ever seen of
claims
her.
that, allegedly, Aaliyah fell down the flight of stairs in their front room. And apparently, Robert did not realize the extent of her injuries.
Wait, what? So this is his excuse?
That evening, supermarket, before heading back to Robert's home.
Or is this what actually happened?
And later that evening, Robert was looking after Aaliyah while Jasmine was out of the house. Robert claims that, allegedly, Aaliyah fell down the flight of stairs in their front room. And apparently, Robert did not realize the extent of her injuries. So instead of calling emergency services, he put her to bed. Jasmine returned home later that night, and after going upstairs to check on her daughter, she found that Aaliyah was dead. Jasmine was overcome with feelings of terror, pain, and confusion. And there was only one person to blame. Distraught with the situation, Jasmine confronted Robert, where the two then found themselves in a heated argument, until eventually, Robert lost his temper.
And
He
shot
picked
her?
up a hammer from the kitchen counter,
Oh.
and when she wasn't looking, he struck Jasmine in the back of the head.
Ow.
She fell to the floor, bleeding but still alive. Seething from the argument but still full of rage, Robert wasn't done. He ran upstairs, unlocked the master bedroom door, and picked up one of his guns.
Dude, that's so... Like, how? How? You just hit her in the back of the head because you got her daughter killed and she got pissed off at you. And then you hit her in the back of the head. And then not only is she on the ground probably fucking... Well, definitely dying, bleeding out, and definitely has some trauma, you know, like head injury. You're still gonna walk all the way upstairs or wherever the fuck to your room, unlock the box, grab the gun, you know, cock it, make sure the safety's off, all this shit. You're still that mad whenever you're the reason her kid died?
Descending back downstairs, he found
Piece of
Jasmine
shit,
lying
bro.
on the floor. He aimed at her head and pulled the trigger.
Nobody heard a gunshot in that small ass...
Robert
Look
then
at all
wrapped
that.
the two bodies in a blue moving sheet.
There's gotta be more people
and
living
cleaned
there.
the crime scene to cover his tracks. The next day, on the 17th of April, Robert was then spotted filling up his car and an extra jerry can of gasoline. And several hours later at 6 p.m, supposedly after dumping the bodies, he
420.
was then seen at a cannabis retail store.
Oh, I was just joking.
And the very next day,
I
he
saw
was
the
then
time.
spotted throwing garbage into the dumpster.
I saw this over here. And I was like, oh, what are the odds? It's a fucking
Retail store.
dispensary. Oh, stupid ass.
And the very next day, he was then spotted throwing garbage into the dumpsters of his condo complex. Some of these items, which were vital to the trial, were later discovered by investigators.
How do you find that?
Robert was again found on CCTV, taking his car through a car wash, in further efforts to cover his tracks.
I've always wondered how they find stuff in the trash after, like, not only it found its way to a dumpster, and then that dumpster found its way into a whole trash truck, and then that truck dumped it somewhere in a field. How the fuck do you find that stuff? Do they have dedicated dumping areas for each part of town, maybe? Maybe?
The legal proceedings to this case are quite messy and choppy, but 2 years later, in November of 2021, Robert pled guilty to the murder of Jasmine Lovett. He would, however, plead not guilty to murdering Aaliyah Sanderson, claiming that her death was completely accidental. Robert still argues to this date that she accidentally fell down the stairs. And while forensic analysis claims that this could potentially be true, the evidence suggests that it's very unlikely. And with the number of times
probably
that
beat her.
Robert has lied to people, including the police, the media, and the public, do we really believe him now? With Robert pleading guilty to Jasmine Lovett, but not guilty to Aaliyah Sanderson, the judge will make up their own mind on the 24th of January 2022.
Oh,
And
shit.
with Canadian
That's soon.
second-degree murder charges carrying
Wait,
life
that's today.
sentences, the judge will make up their own mind on the 24th of January
Oh, that's
2022.
in 2 days.
And with Canadian
I thought
second-degree
that's what
murder
he's like.
charges carrying life sentences, Robert will only be eligible for parole sometime between 10 to 25 years, of which these figures can double if he is also found guilty of Aaliyah's death.
I hope they find him guilty, bro. It
And
don't
if you
even
would
matter
like
at this
full case
point. You
closure, I
fucking
post case updates to my Instagram.
should have murdered the
I'll
mom
leave a link
after
to
it was
that
your
in the
fault.
video description down below. With Robert Leeming's
Psycho.
case at times being eerily similar to the case of Chris Watts, some
Oh, yeah, I
have
heard
dubbed
about this
him
fool
as
too.
Canada's Chris Watts. And honestly, I can see why. Both Robert and Chris were bumbling through life, giving little care to those closest. They callously killed the people who loved them the most, cleaning the crime scene as if it meant nothing, and hiding their bodies in the most of remote areas. They lied to the media, lied to police, and even lied to themselves. But the cracks in their stories were obvious from the very beginning, and when their own story came
Fuck
crashing
'em.
down upon them, they were caught.
Good. Rather caught than
To
not,
finish
right?
off today's case, I thought I'd read out a statement that was written by Jasmine about life back in the year 2017. In a Facebook post to friends, she wrote, "If I could speak to everyone in the world at the same time, I would say slow down and enjoy what you've accomplished at this point so far. Find your inner peace and stay humble instead of always thinking too much about what you don't have or where you want to be in life but aren't yet. And remember, everyone's on their own amazing journey. Embrace who you are, be loud and proud, and remain positive. You're doing awesome.
I respect that.
Thank you so much for watching another video today by Coffee House Crime. If you found this video interesting and would like to see more...
Damn. What a piece of shit. How can you do that to someone, bro? And a little girl. At this point, yeah, I guess, like, that is believable. Like, oh, the girl fell, it was an accident. But it should have just been left at that. You guys argue, yeah, like, you're the reason that the kid is dead, you know? You can't get pissed off at that and then hit her with a fucking bat. No matter, like, even if you're drunk, I don't think drunk, I don't know. I feel like whenever you're drunk, it's not going to just make you want to kill someone. It just, I don't know. If you're going to do it, you're going to do it. And this dude was obviously a fucking psychopath. Oh, man. That makes me sick. But this was a long-ass video, man. I was going to say, hopefully they find out what happened, but I guess this was a whole-ass story, bro. 30 minutes. But I'm glad he's caught, and I hope they find him guilty, man. We'll find out in a couple days. But, stay safe out there. Please don't move in with people you don't fully know. And I mean, if you're in love, you know, they ain't really... Just be careful. Watch your back, you know? Watch your back. And other people, stop being bad guys. Stop being bad, fuckers. Nobody wants you in this world. Stop doing that. Be good. What the fuck, bro? Is it so hard to not kill people and not be evil and just vibe? You know, we only got one life. Why are you going to take other people's away? Why are you going to take other lives whenever you could just... If it's that important to you, take your own, bro. I'm just kidding. I don't endorse that either. Just fucking behave, man. I don't know. Stay safe. See ya.